Now we're going to welcome a special group of women. We're going to get into the minds of the League of Women Coders. Please welcome to the stage the moderator, Jenny Gonsalves from SugarCRM, Liv Ericksson from Microsoft, Cindy Wang Chu from Polyvore, Poornima Vijayashankar, did I say it correctly? Okay, from Femgineer, and Heidi Mujhid from Hackbright Academy. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's get started. Can you guys hear me? Yes? All right, let's get started. I'm really, really excited about being here today. When I found out about this opportunity, you know, it was a decision. Do I want to be a part of the panel? Do I want to be a moderator? And I started off this year with the New Year's resolution where I wanted to do everything in moderation. So I thought, hey, this fits in well with moderating. So I've never done this before. I thought this would be fun. So I looked up sort of tips to moderate a panel successfully. And one of the top highlighted tips were that, you know, you're not supposed to speak for more than 20% of the time. So I'll try my best to adhere to that. You know, it's going to be hard because more often than not, I've been on the panel rather than moderating. But what I'd like to do today is start off by each of us introducing ourselves, and I'll go first. So I am the VP of Engineering at SugarCRM. I joined SugarCRM as one of the earliest engineers on the development team, and I was actually one of the only female engineers for a very long time. Now, one of the advantages of having that is you pretty much have your private bathroom, because the ladies' bathroom is just for me. So that's cool. So over the years, you know, I took on more challenging roles as the company grew, and I sort of scaled with that. When I started, I was engineer number 6 of 6 in the development team. Today, I run the entire engineering org, consisting of development, QA, and the org is a little over 150, and it's geo-distributed just about everywhere that you can imagine. All right, Liv.
Hey everyone, I'm Liv Ericksson. I'm a virtual reality and augmented reality developer and evangelist here at Microsoft. The short version of my title is that I basically get to hack on really cool projects and then teach other people how to do it. I've been at Microsoft full-time for 3 years. I did 3 internships here, and I've been doing specific virtual reality development for about 1.5 years. Getting more women and more diversity in engineering has always been a passion of mine. I was a member of the Society of Women Engineers in college and a member of the engineering sorority Alpha Omega Epsilon. Right now I co-run a hopefully soon to be official nonprofit for AR and VR women, and I'm really excited to be here.
Great. All right, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Chu from Polyvore. My story is actually kind of similar to Jenny's. I started at Polyvore when we were 20 people, very small team back then. I started as a developer, gradually moved into tech leadership. A couple years ago, I moved into engineering management full-time, which was new to me. And now I run Polyvore's web team, so pretty much everything that you see on the website, as well as the iOS application.
Hi, Poornima Vijayashankar. I actually got my start as an R&D engineer at Synopsys, so working at a big company, and then got lured into startup land at Mint.com, where I was the founding engineer. And while I was at Mint, I wanted to just pursue a side passion, which was writing. So I started a blog called Femgineer. It was just about engineering entrepreneurship. Didn't really think anything of it at the time. And then after Mint got acquired by Intuit, decided that I wanted to strike out on my own. And so I started a couple projects, taught at Duke, and then came back out here to focus on Femgineer. And today, Femgineer is an education company where our goal is to help all of you build products and companies.
Hi everyone, my name is Hadiyah Mujahid. I am a senior instructor at Hackbright Academy. I started my career at a big company as well. About 15 years ago, I started at Lockheed Martin as a software developer. Was there for about 10 years, and then I would say about 5 years ago, also got the startup bug. I left to start my own company, and currently I run a software consultancy as well. And during the evenings, I have the opportunity to meet young women who are looking to change their careers and teach them coding.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things that each of us on the panel here today has is electrical engineering or a CS degree. So why don't you guys share a story about how that happened? So do you want to go first?
I can go first. My story is completely by accident. And I tell the story a lot, but I got a CS degree by trying to take the easy route out of college. So I was in college 97 to 2001. I started as a pre-med major, and then along the way, I think halfway through college, I decided that I really, really hated organic chemistry and chemistry. And I really wanted to just hurry up and be done with college. I looked through a few different options to figure out what I can take and basically sail through college. I'm a bit of a lazy developer as well. For me, computer science made sense for me. I had done some programming even before college, some background in HTML and CSS, and it's like, okay, well, this sounds kind of simple for me, and I switched to computer science, and that's how I ended up with a computer science degree.
Excellent. Poornima?
Yeah, so my dad's actually a hardware engineer, and we were immigrants, and when he was at grad school, actually at San Jose State, because he didn't have childcare, I just went to school with him. So my first exposure were those books with the squiggly diagrams, and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And then eventually, he went to work at some pretty big companies. I got to see a fab where they made those like chips and wafers. I originally thought he was making potato chips, and then I was like, what are these things? Oh, it's kind of cool. So I got interested in technology, but I always thought of it as like a hobby. And so I would do things around the house, and I would do projects, but I always saw it as like, oh, like this 9-to-5 job in a cubicle that my dad does. Like, I don't really want to do that. And I really wanted to be a lawyer, but then finally when I got to college, I realized what being a lawyer meant. No offense to any lawyers out there, but it just wasn't my personality. I was a builder, I was a maker, and I really wanted to pursue that creative passion. So I ended up majoring in computer science, and then my junior year had this bright idea to also major in electrical engineering, which ended up meaning that I was like overloading all the time, but graduated in 4 years, and I'm glad I did it all.
My story is also a little crooked. When I started at Stanford, I thought I was going to be a humanities major. I love to read, I love to write. I did journalism in high school, but then it's so much reading in college. And at the time, I kind of on a whim took a class which was CS for non-majors. It's really basic HTML and CSS, and instead of doing my reading, it became super fun to say like, oh, you can write these lines of code and stuff appears on a page, and it's like kind of amazing. And so I got bit a little bit late, but I ended up finishing my degree, and I was so excited that I finished it a little bit early so I could go into the real world and like build real stuff, because that was the part of computer science that was the most amazing thing.
So I get asked a lot, how did you get into computer science, or when did you decide to do computer science? And the honest answer is I don't remember ever consciously making that decision, because I always loved computers and video games. And growing up, my dad is a systems engineer, so he always had different computers around the house that I would play with and sometimes like break. And when I was 7, I got an N64, and I was really into video games. And as soon as I realized I could actually control the computers instead of just using them, it was like that was the moment where I just kind of ran forward, and I was like, I'm never looking back on computer science. And the truth is, I did struggle a lot in college, because there was a lot of stuff that I did like and some stuff that I really, really didn't like having to do. So there have been a lot of times where I've questioned that, where I kind of felt like I had set myself on a path that I didn't remember choosing, but I never really regretted making that decision. And I got a CS degree. I mentioned I've really been into a lot of computer and tech related organizations. I still really love video games. I ran a World of Warcraft blog in college. And like you were kind of saying, just being able to create and make things, and now with VR, make new worlds, like that degree, I'm really, really glad I never changed my mind when I was going through the classes I didn't like.
Excellent. For me, my love for computers started in elementary school. We had a classroom computer that you could use, and you could play games on it during recess if you didn't want to go out. And I chose to use the computer instead of going out and playing. I think that was the first clue that I was doomed to geekdom, if you will. And at the risk of dating myself, the game that I played then was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So not quite World of Warcraft yet. And I was lucky enough to go to a high school that offered computer programming courses. So I sort of took a first one just because I wanted to spend more time with computers, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't really think it was something that you could make a career out of, just because it was sort of a pleasure thing for me. When it came time to picking majors for college and picking out colleges, I was naturally gravitating towards sort of an electrical engineering or your traditional engineering fields. And in the course catalog, I saw an entry there for computer science, and I thought, oh, interesting. I didn't realize you could actually do this for a living. I decided to give it a shot and haven't looked back since. So it's pretty good. Great to hear your stories. I want to switch gears a little bit. So I think each of us have touched up on how we've discovered coding. Let's talk about women in coding in general, specifically girls in coding. There is clearly a gender imbalance out there. And I actually, I need to pull out some stats. I don't remember this off the top of my head. But the National Center for Education Statistics reported that women made up just 18% of undergraduate CS majors in 2010 to 2011. And as recently as 1983 to 84, that number was more like 37%. So clearly something's happened, right? Things have changed. So first, let's talk about what each of you think contributed to that imbalance. Because clearly it started up here. It wasn't quite 50 or 60%, but it was still much higher, and then it sort of tanked. What do you ladies think were some key contributors to that?
Well, there's not just one factor. I think a lot of times the narrative is, there's just like one thing, like women stopped caring about computers, or, Lego started marketing more to boys. Like, yes, all of those things may or may not be true, but there were several factors going in. I think the first definitely was that there was a lot more marketing geared towards men in terms of consumer electronics or even just toys for kids. I think the second thing that started happening was that there were more and more difficult environments in terms of classroom settings. So if you go and look at a lot of computer science programs today, they're mostly taught by a certain select group of individuals. I won't point out fingers or anything like that, but they tend to keep hiring that same group of individuals over and over again. And that then sends a signal to people out in the audience listening and in those lectures of, should I even pursue a career in this, or should I go somewhere else? And then the same sort of selection happens again when it's time to apply for a job. In fact, one of my business partner was in that 1983, 1984 camp and told me that when she went out, she would actually get all the easier questions, whereas her husband would get harder questions, and she didn't know why. She was just, had the same degree, had the same abilities. So you see this happen just across the pipeline from both as a child, then into undergrad, and then, of course, in the career itself.
I think speaking a little bit from personal experience and from being a part of a lot of engineering organizations, there's still a lot of mystery about how creative coding actually can be. And I think that there's been a lot of really great initiatives recently with like Scratch and the work coming out of MIT with Girls Who Code, to exposing girls at a younger age just how artistic and freeing writing code actually is. And I'm a virtual reality developer, so I'm a little bit biased in world building and the kind of video game and 3D environment side of things. But when I was going through college, all of college, I didn't realize exactly how powerful being a software engineer was, because I was doing algorithms 10 different ways every semester.
Cindy, or do you guys have anything to add to that?
I mean, certainly for me, when I was in school, the dot-com bust loomed very large, and I think it affected women disproportionately, because it suddenly felt like this wasn't a viable career anymore. And I don't know if it's something that we consider more or not, but I definitely got a lot of feedback when I was getting my degree that you're crazy, there's not gonna be any jobs. And there was a lot of pushback against that.
Did you have anything else to add? All right, great. How much do you think the media contributes to this? So, and let me tell you what I mean by that, right? So when, when I decided to choose computer science as a major and a career path, there weren't sort of stereotypes about computer science yet, right? The computer geek as such, as we know it today, didn't really exist. But if you look at all the media stereotypes today around computing and careers tied to computing, they're typically male and a certain type of male. How much do you think that contributes to the imbalance?
Okay, now I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So I didn't answer the previous question because I'm actually an outlier in terms of my experience. I'm a Black woman, and I went to a Black college, whereas most universities, I think the percentage, as you mentioned, is 18% women in computer science, where at Black colleges it's closer to 40%. So
wow.
my experience has been completely different, even the environment that I learned in. So what's interesting now is that I also graduated 15 years ago, or in 2001, where there weren't any stereotypes about women in coding. And it was just, I just did it, and I didn't feel anything negative, or I didn't hear all the horror stories that we do nowadays. As opposed to today, I'm frequently called upon with people who are now graduating, entering the workforce with hesitations because they hear a lot of horror stories. Is it really true? Is it really like this? And not to take away, there are some really negative stories out there, and these are true stories. But when I look at my overall path, my experience has been mainly positive versus the negative interactions. And I think the media, their job is to kind of make stories create sensational stories. I think some of that can kind of even work against the work that a lot of organizations are doing now.
Good. Poornima, Cindy, or Liv, anybody want to add to that?
I mean, I think graduating, probably most of us knew that any industry, with the exception of maybe fashion and a few others, were going to be male-dominated, and that we were just going to have to suck it up if we wanted to participate. And so I didn't really, go in thinking that it was going to be easy. I also, similar to what she said, I don't think that there were any major stereotypes. I think there was a lot of unconscious bias. So, for example, when I told one of my advisors I would like to be an architect, he kind of laughed at me and was like, there's only 4 of those in the world, and I don't know if that's such a good, plan for you to think about that. And so I was like, all right, I got to find a new advisor.
Sorry, and you mean software architect?
Yeah, software architect, yeah. And so there were a lot of those, whereas like some of my male, counterparts definitely were like, oh, I love my advisor, he's like the bomb, and blah, blah. So there was definitely like, coaching that had to take place. But I was also fortunate where in my school, there were a few female professors, and I would just go and spend as much time as I could with them to get the support that I needed. And I think towards, I remember moving to the Valley, and there was a little bit of bias initially where people, this was in 2004 and the earlier time, where people would almost make fun of you if you dressed well and if you were attractive, and they thought you were in marketing or PR. And then when you're like, I'm writing code, Betty, every day, 10 hours, 12 hours, they'd be like, that can't be, that just doesn't exist, So they came up with this title unicorn, which is what the hell? So those things have started to come out a little bit, which is unfortunate, to stereotype women who are smart not whatever into a particular category. So I'm starting to see that a little bit more now rather than when I was in college or prior to that.
All right, Cindy, Liv?
Yeah, I definitely think the media reinforces that. I mean, my own experiences, certainly at Polyvore, where the company is half women, my own team is half women. Engineering is a quarter women, which is pretty good for the industry, but we're working on it. And it sounds like, from all of our experiences, that there are a lot of women in this industry, but you watch a show like Silicon Valley, and there aren't any women there. And they claim, well, that's because that's how the valley is. There just aren't any women. And like here today, that's completely untrue, right?
Yeah, I think I have to kind of comment and agree. Like, I think the unconscious bias has been more negative for me personally than media, because I kind of, with media, I've always had this idea like, okay, well, it's fake. It's like, you know, drama. It's a little bit over the top. I think, like you were saying, like trying to get reactions out of people. You know, I have people that I've known now for like probably like 5 or 6 months who are just now realizing that I actually write code and I'm actually a developer. And I have had tons of conversations about software with these friends, and it's just not something that they really think about until they actually like come over and they're like, oh wait, like you're actually writing code right now. Like I had no idea that you actually were doing that. And I think that's a little bit more heartbreaking to me, because it's people that I'm close to and they don't realize that their idea of what a developer looks like is so different from, you know, what actual developers look like. And I think, you know, like we were all kind of saying, there are a lot of women out there who are in this field who maybe don't have as loud of voices as some of the more prominent figures that people are kind of accustomed to listening to, which I think is a big reason why I started blogging, and I'm guessing probably a big reason why you did too.
Yeah, and I think, you know, tied into some of that is I know a lot of friends of mine, for example, who majored in CS. And just throughout my career, I've met a lot of wonderful females majored in CS, graduated with a degree with CS, but sort of switch gears and don't ever program for a living, you know, or they might have taken up their first job as programmers and then they kind of gravitate towards just everything else out there. So that's sort of, you know, an interesting dimension there. Yeah, absolutely.
About the media. So, like I said, I've been a developer for 15 years now, and the one positive thing about that the media has shone light on is that most of my life, my family and my friends never knew or had no concept of what I did, but within the last 2 years, they're like, oh, that's what you do. So that's one of the positive stories that have come out, the media shining light on this.
All right, okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit to, you know, to a little bit more. Now, this is purposefully controversial, so bear with me here. So yeah, I mean, there is a gender imbalance. Why should we do anything about it? You know, so there are only 18% women graduating from CS majors. Wow. All right, that's just the way it is. Why should we do anything to change that?
So I want to start because I have an example that happened to me literally last week that's really kind of made me super, like even more realize like how in my day-to-day life this is still affecting me. So I went to a bunch of the events around the Game Developer Conference a couple weeks ago in San Francisco, and I was tweeting about that. And as soon as I started tweeting about GDC, I started getting all of these ads for men's deodorant and like men's dating apps. And it was mind-blowing to me that Twitter knew enough to know that like I'm dating a man, but not that I'm actually a girl, because there's so much bias in the software that is doing analytics. It's capturing data about us in virtual reality. If you program your camera to be 6 feet tall, and I'm not 6 feet tall, most women aren't 6 feet tall, then you have this really weird experience. But it's stuff that we don't even think about until we're actually testing our software and having a diverse range of people building it. So for me, just the fact like, okay, I'm pretty sure that whoever wrote that analytics like software was probably not a woman into games, because they would have realized that that's probably a pretty reasonable combination. That's like a really big factor. And when we start building more and more software that impacts everyone's lives in the medical industry, like these assumptions aren't safe anymore.
Absolutely, right?
I totally agree with that sentiment. Like building products for everyone, I think you really need a diverse team. I mean, Polyvore is a fashion company. We have a lot of men who work on the product, and I think that's hugely important. I think diversity in gender, diversity in thought is critical in terms of solving problems.
Absolutely.
So I think to look at it from another angle, the way that I always saw engineering was I can go, like, because I come from an immigrant family and my parents definitely built me up to be a type A. It was like, you have 3 options of making money. You can go be a lawyer, you can go be a doctor, or you could go be an engineer. And kind of to your point, I was like, I don't want to spend 8 years in school or like $200K. I also want to have some level of flexibility in my career, and I still want to make a lot of money so that I can make an impact in my life and other people's lives. And so as I was thinking about the options that were out there, I thought, okay, technology is where I want to be. And so I think a lot of times when we are educating our either children or people that are going to college and they're concerned about, oh my gosh, am I going to get a job when I graduate? Am I going to be able to afford, to have a home, to have a car, to have all these things? I think pointing them in the direction of technology is a good option, because it is some of the highest paying, most in demand, as well as creative jobs, and there's just a range of applications. So that's the lens that I've always seen it as. But I think a lot of that narrative sometimes gets lost and people don't speak about it in that way. Like, yes, it's important to build products and all these things, but at the end of the day, think about it a little bit more individualistically and think, what kind of life do you want to leave? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world? And technology definitely gives you the freedom to do that.
I guess my response is that it's only right and it's only fair. And I don't know if I would use the word encourage young women to grow into careers as developers, but more so expose young girls to careers so that they have a choice. So they have the choice, and we should reach out to them just as much as we're reaching out to little boys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on something really key there, because often when we talk about this initiative or this drive, we talk about encouragement, and that's always been something that's great, but it almost, there's an element of, is this sort of forceful? It's sort of implied in there, but I think you hit it right on the spot. It's really, show them that this is an option and it's a viable option, and that it's out there, because I think today, it's sort of not even an option. So touching on that then, what if anything have each of you done to put that out there within your lives? I mean, we're here today, so that's obviously a huge step, but specifically targeting sort of younger women that are, earlier at an interesting juncture of choosing their careers. What, if anything, have you guys done to not encourage that, but put it out there? Yeah.
So, I mean, actually, Femgineer is more focused on keeping women in the industry, so we tend to skew older, like 25 plus. I even have some students that are 50 plus, because it's great to expose younger women and girls to technology, but if they don't have role models, if there's a leaky pipeline at the end of the pipe, then it doesn't matter. Having said that, though, I do a fair amount of speaking. I've spoken at Girls Who Code. There are a number of organizations around the country that I've also gone and done like 1 or 2 day mentorship programs. So I try to be as active, but in my day-to-day, I'm certainly more focused on older women and keeping them in technology.
All right. Anybody
I
else?
think to your point, having role models is a huge, huge thing. And I think the more visible we are, the more outspoken we are, I think it helps young girls and women see like, oh, this is normal. Like, there are lots of women who do this. And to see how many different paths there are into this industry so that they can feel like they can do it too. I don't personally like really enjoy doing these events for myself, but I tend not to say no to them because I feel like it is important that people recognize that we're here. And then more specifically, Polyvore has been acquired by Yahoo now, so we have a Women in Tech group that does outreach with local schools, middle schools, and we work with their technology clubs, and we bring them to campus and show them what it's like to work in the industry.
Great. Liv? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I kind of ditto everything that was been said. I think it's very key to be visible. Again, this is one of the reasons why I'm here, so that you always have a presence. But for younger women, I've been involved in a number of initiatives in terms of even working with Black Girls Code to kind of help create a curriculum or help expose young girls to code, and even small little steps. Like, my aunt is a teacher. She's a first grade teacher. And so I send her like little packets like, oh, you can show this to your girls, or just small things like that you could do every day.
Yeah. One of the things I like to kind of build into my job as a VR developer and evangelist, like part of that evangelism is reaching new people about virtual reality. And I love to set aside time to go into like STEM camps or STEAM camps, code academies, geared towards, students. I've worked with Coder Dojo in the past to do Unity and VR development workshops, because I am always blown away with how much kids love to code, especially when they have people they feel comfortable asking for help. And there have been times where I'll go in as a volunteer and just kind of like, I don't even know the technology that well, but if you're there to kind of help them work through problems, that makes a really big impact. Like, hey, this person I can kind of relate to, and she cares that I'm actually doing this work instead of just kind of ignoring me while the rest of like the loud boys are getting all the attention. And I've seen classes where that happens, and I'm really glad that I'm there to be able to say like, oh, I can see, I think she's afraid to raise her hand, but she wants to like get this done. So I think that making sure that kind of all areas of that pipeline and all areas of your career stage, because now your career can start when you're really, really young. It's kind of amazing. And making sure that they just feel like they have someone that they're comfortable talking to, and just being, like you were saying, exposed to all sorts of different types of engineering is really, really important.
Yeah. I think, similar to what Cindy just said earlier, for me personally, I mean, I didn't, I thought, what was the big deal? This is what I do. It's my life. It's, what's there to talk about, right? And then I first got involved in one of these types of events a couple of years ago, and that's when I truly realized the power of just sort of being out there and having these conversations. And it's not, it's less for yourself, right? Because I was looking at it from a perspective of, what's it going to do? I'm just going to go out there and talk about something that I do. It's not really a big deal. But it's the power to influence. It's the power to not encourage, but influence. I think that next generation, that's very, very powerful.
Just to add on to that a little bit, I think that kind of even looking back at the media, kids are exposed to a lot of things about like, oh, this is what a doctor does. This is what a lawyer does. This is what a teacher does, but they don't see what an engineer does unless those engineers actively go out and talk about it, because a lot of it is in an office building. So it can be really like kind of hard to make that connection between, oh, I use Snapchat, this is what it means to build Snapchat. And like you're kind of saying, like, it's something that I take for granted sometimes, but I think kids just really love being talked to about anything about what adults do. They're really curious, and we have to actively seek out those opportunities in tech, because they're not just kind of media, like not in the media as much, and they're not people that kids interact with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think if you look at, like if you read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, again, she just told her story, right? That's really what it is, but look at the amazing power that it's had over just millions of women over the world. And I know when I personally read it, there was just so much of it that just, oh my God, I didn't realize this was sort of because I'm a woman, I feel some of these things. It was just, oh, this is who I am. But really reading that book, for example, just opened up, whole new ideas. So this isn't dissimilar from that. So we're actually just keeping a time check here. We should be wrapping up this discussion and moving more into the Q&A side. So is there anything you guys wanted to add before we move into the Q&A portion of this session? No? All right.
I was going to say, the biggest thing for me when I kind of realized I had to take charge of what my own career looked like, because I wanted to code, but I didn't know what type of development I wanted to do, is that a lot of, like, you may have a couple of opportunities that are outliers, but for the most part, you need to drive that from yourself. You need to want to go out and find what it is that you're really passionate about. And finding what you're really passionate about makes all the difference in how engaged you are with the work that you're doing. So I highly encourage anybody who feels like a little out of place, because I'm only 3 years out of college now, and I already was starting to feel that burnout of like, I don't know if I want to stay in the tech industry because I didn't love what I was doing. And finding what I really, really love in virtual reality has completely changed my entire career trajectory, but that had to come from me.
Great. All right, with that, we'll take some questions.
Hi there. I own a recruitment company, and we specialize in BI and software development, and about 20% of the candidates that we interview are women. And I'm wondering, from a perspective of women that work in the industry, if you feel that the corporate culture sometimes promotes kind of a culture of conflict, and that we've talked to people before, and sometimes people have gotten out of it because sometimes they may not be comfortable in an environment where there may be yelling, or people are somewhat aggressive, and I don't know if that ever has an impact on the industry.
I definitely think so. I again, not gonna name any names, but I did have a few friends, girlfriends who had graduated from Stanford and had pursued careers, and were told that they weren't aggressive enough in the organization, and that they either needed to become more aggressive or they needed to go somewhere else. I wouldn't necessarily say that's limited to corporate culture, though. I think it just depends on the company, because I certainly see that behavior across the board. So I think understanding what kind of culture you're getting involved in the company, and a lot of that means interviewing the people that you are going to work for, maybe doing like a work-along day, and then if you have employees, or there are employees who are your friends, really kind of picking their brain on what it's truly like there to get an understanding. Because there are other cultures where that doesn't exist, and there's a lot more camaraderie. But yeah, that can make you feel like if the environment isn't right, then I've noticed a lot of women opt out. They're like, I don't want to code anymore. And when I dig in a little bit deeper, because I mentor a lot of them, it's like, you really don't like to code? And then we find out, no, it's actually because my team sucks, or I have a boss hole, or, whatever. So it's like, you just gotta jump ship, like go somewhere else, like go outside. There's like a whole valley of companies, right? And then they get the okay, and then they go for it, but realize that you're not limited to just whatever you might be experiencing right now.
I also think, I thought that it was really good. I also think there's a little bit of setting expectations, because it's not only within tech, right? There are a lot of other industries, but setting expectations that as a woman, sometimes when you are just going to come across bossholes or assholes, and how do you deal with that? Setting like, what is it that I want to get out of that? And setting a plan to like, despite this, this is how this is what I'm here for, and this is what I'm going to get out of it.
Hi. As engineers, I suspect that a lot of you guys are introverted, and you said several times, I'm not too comfortable being here, but I do it anyway because I want to provide the PR, and at least in my experience, I think that's a generalization, but it's true. What can people in the industry and who aren't coders do to help promote the idea and people going into that field?
What can people do to promote going into tech or going into develop more coding?
I'm an extrovert. I'm out there talking to people all the time, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I think just building exposure for the organizations that are already out there, right? So letting them know that, again, there's a lot of great companies hiring, that there's organizations like Girls Who Code, Black Girls Who Code, and that they can go and participate in these organizations if they want to get started. There's also a number of women's organizations, so if you're not young, but instead you're in your career, there's other organizations that you can participate in as well. There's also, if you're thinking about a switch in your career, if you want to become a coder, you can go to Hackbright or Hack Reactor. There's a lot of organizations. There's also online programs. So yeah, I think it's just being a part of the conversation as it comes up.
I also don't. I think you can, if you reach out, like you said, you're an extrovert, and I am an introvert. But even I would say that introverts are probably even better in smaller groups. So taking like step by step. So if you're working with a small group of kids, taking them to meet like one person, or just so that they can, it doesn't have to be a large effort. But if you can kind of make an individual, personal relationship so that people can be exposed to a developer, I think that that's impactful in a way.
Hi. I'm wondering, a lot of you have talked about, being computer scientist undergraduates or computer scientist majors. What about other technical fields like mathematicians or physicists or bioengineers who spend 90% of their time coding? I mean, I'm not hearing that from you. Do you consider them engineering, caliber? How do you relate to them? Could you talk about that?
Sure, I think I'll let you guys chime in. But just a quick thought on that. Absolutely. I think in this conversation, anyone who's coding, is an engineer in this context. The reason we didn't really touch on that is just we were looking for, hey, here's what we all have in common here today. So let's take that common thread to drive the conversation further. But let's say we had somebody here that had a math degree, for example, and was still doing that. It's absolutely a part of the same equation. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Jenny said, but also that tech is kind of a unique industry in that you don't have to have a degree to be awesome at it, right? I work with a lot of people who have math degrees, philosophy degrees, English degrees, And it kind of doesn't matter. Your experience and your ability and willingness to learn matters way more, I think, than what degree you have, which is maybe not as true in other industries. And it's never too late, right? So Hackbright, Hack Reactor, Coding Dojo, like these are all places where you can make a career switch in a very short time. So if that's what you want to do, I would encourage it.
Well, I think it's more of that's another application, right? So I would actually see it from both sides. If you pursue computer science, you can go into areas like a bioinformatics, like bioengineering. You could build medical devices as an electrical engineer. You can also do the opposite. You can be a biomedical engineer and decide that you want to build a consumer product. So I think there's a lot of crossover. We're not doing this to be like discriminatory or anything, but I think to Jenny's point is like, we all have CS degrees and we've at some point built some products that have been more consumer facing or like B2B. But I wouldn't discount the work that they do. I think it's all encompassing. If anything, I would say there needs to be more exposure to the applications because it often feels like all there is out there is consumer internet or enterprise software, and there are others. And a lot of times kids like that. There's more applications like, hey, you can build a 3D model of a heart, or you can build a prosthetic arm, and all of that is powered by software. So I would say, it's totally fine, and to encourage them to know about these other areas.
Hi, I just have a question, and I've been thinking through, is it a comment, is it a question, how should I phrase it? So the question that I have is that I have a strong business background, sales, marketing career, and I love my career. And I feel, though, that I wish I also knew how to code, or maybe that I had majored in CS. And so I hear a lot of messages about you can switch your career, you can go to Hackbright, you can pursue these other programs. But for me, I don't really think it would be valuable to change my path entirely. So it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts around how women that don't have a background in CS and coding could learn maybe some basic skill sets and how that might impact other parts of their lives.
Okay, shameless plug. I teach intro to coding at Hackbright, and many of the women that I teach, some of them are looking for a career change. Some of them don't know if they want a career change yet, or some of them just know that they're not going to have a career change, but they feel like coding is something that they need to tune into. So my classes start next week. We start a new semester next week. No, but seriously, honestly, I think part of it is figuring out why do you want to learn how to code, right? That's the first step, because a lot of times people jump into a lot of these programs just because the media is blasting out, and maybe it's just not for them. But figuring out why you want to learn how to code. If it's to, as a marketer, there are many avenues where coding can help you. Especially you can make use of some APIs, build some scripts, just to make some of your day job easier. Figure out what you need, and then figure out what's that path to kind of get it in. So that would be my response.
Great. And so Hackbright is great. I fully recommend that. However, there's just so much information out there. You just have to figure out what you want to do. So, for a starter, do I want to build a mobile app that does something very simple? And there's just so many resources out there today. 15 years ago, if you wanted to do something similar, it wasn't quite the same. You probably had to take a course. The information, the how-tos, the free toolkits were very sparse. Today, it's really a matter of figuring out, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and here's what I want to do. You can Google it. It's just the resources are endless. So you can still go to Hackbright, but you can also choose this path as well. Yeah.
I would also add, if you want to learn to code and see if it's for you, pick a passion project on the side. Do it in your spare time, and it has to be something you really like, because otherwise you get home at the end of the day and you're like, I don't want to do this. So pick something simple and build it. And using, go to boot camp or use free resources like Code Academy, Khan Academy, and like kind of piece it together and see if it's something that you want to do, and then decide if it's something like, maybe it's just a hobby, and that's fine. I think most of us probably have side projects and hobbies that we work on, regardless of our day jobs. Or you might decide like, oh my God, this is amazing, and this is the career I wanted my whole life, and that's fine too.